Welcome to the Salem Chamber podcast. I'm Tom Hoffert, CEO of the Salem Chamber, and we're pleased to have you listening. Let's jump right in. Today, we're joined by Justin Martin, owner of 3 different businesses here in Salem. And I want to start Perseverance Strategies. Justin, is probably how many people have gotten to know you and understand your passions for being involved with policy work. Tell us a little bit about Perseverance and how that company came about.
Well, thanks for having me today, Tom. Perseverance is just a small government relations firm located here in Salem. As you may or may not know, I was an in-house government relations director for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde for about 7.5 years. Went away to graduate school, and when I came home, got in a little row with my client and decided to go off on my own. And that was June of 2004, so we're looking forward to our 20th year at Perseverance. And just went out, got a bunch of clients, people that we really believe in, and again, just a small government relations firm, just 2 of us in the firm, and really proud to represent the people we represent, and just love the approach of getting to know the client, getting to know, obviously, the legislature, which is what we do. And it's been really fun. So I'm very proud of that 20 years out on my own, and got my main client back within 2 months. And that's been a 27-year run with Grand Ronde. And it's an interesting line of work, and it's really fun as well.
Well, there are levels to this game, and I love that statement when it comes to most things that are competitive in life, and lobbying is no different. But I want to start back a little bit earlier. You are a McKay grad. You're a Salem product. Go Scots. You're a talented athlete, and we share a sport in common. My father was the head baseball coach at South Salem High School. Well, you were a star pitcher at McKay. Tell me a little bit about growing up with a talent that really got you all the way to just a step below Major League Baseball, 4 years as a professional athlete. But tell me what it's like growing up in Salem as a pretty talented young athlete.
Well, I don't know about that. It seems like a lifetime ago, but, it was a lot of fun. And, my only regrets about high school are that I didn't go to North Salem High School. And the reason I say that, I love McKay, and I'm glad I went there. But the only reason I say that is my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles on both sides all went to North Salem. And they built McKay, and my parents were like, yeah, you're going to the school you're going to. So ended up at McKay, and it wasn't a difficult transition. I went to Catholic school, K through 8. It wasn't a difficult transition because of sports, right? Knew everybody in the neighborhood, knew everybody around town. I actually left the Pioneer Little League District and went out to Babe Ruth, so I also met a bunch of my friends, that lived out south in my teenage years. But, it was a wonderful experience. And, I think team sports and sports, I'm not a huge sports guy. I love watching sports. I don't play a lot anymore, which is probably evident. But, it really teaches you something about how to work with other people, how to get along, how to pick your battles, how to figure out how to win, how to lose. And, it's a really good kind of life lesson leading into, a career and being a grown-up. But, I just loved Salem. I'm a Salem kid. For some reason, it's my hometown. We can always get to the big city within an hour or so. And I just really enjoy Salem. I'm really proud to be back home and made a life here and thrilled about it.
Let's dissect a little bit of that younger life again. When you exit McKay and you go directly into professional baseball at that point, or do you now go on to Western Oregon as undergrad? Tell me what happens after McKay High School.
Yeah, so after McKay, I got drafted. I was only 17 coming out of high school, so I was very young for my class. My birthday's this Saturday, so I was late. September 30th birthday, late in the cycle, right? So I was always young. So graduated young, was 17, got drafted by the Angels in the lower rounds. And, Major League Baseball has a draft and follow, right? So I knew I was going to play and didn't go to a 4-year university because you wouldn't be eligible until you were a junior. And so went 1 year junior college up at Mount Hood Community College. and then signed 10 minutes to 12 before the draft in a Sherry's restaurant with a scout named Al Geddes, and he came from Malala to sign me at that Sherry's or whatever the hell it was. And it was an interesting experience. And then, to expound a little bit on just learning a different way of life and how to get along with people and how to, make your way in the world. I mean, you go from playing team sports in high school, which gives you a little bit of that, but then you go to a team event where you've got teammates, you're working towards a common goal, but you're also all competing against each other to make, those 12 spots in the big leagues. And so it was always this unique exercise in you're friends with everybody, you're on the same team, you're competing to win whatever league you're in, but at the same time, you're also competing for a job in your future. So it really taught me a lot about how to get along with people, especially when it's, 24 dudes on the roster, plus all your coaches and trainers, et cetera. So being on long bus rides with 40 individuals really preps you for life, I guess.
I was going to say, you just fly in the private jets everywhere on the single A and double A level.
No, and the first year here in the Midwest, or in the Northwest League, geez, I mean, you get done in Medford and you'd be in Bellingham the next night, right? Or, those were some Spokane to Eugene. I mean, those are some tough trips. And I was in Bend that first year. So a lot of bus time, lots of reading. I wish I had a Kindle back then, or I wish I had a guitar back then to be able to do something on the road.
Oh, that's great. Talk to me. So then you make the transition. You've given it a run at professional baseball. I would imagine I have a few friends who are former and or a couple current professional athletes. There does come a time where, and sometimes it's with a thud, that this comes to an end, and oftentimes not on the athletes' their own accord. Tell me how that transition happened for you, because there's a great story we're going to tell here coming up. But tell me about the conclusion of that.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I had a lot of physical problems when I was playing, right? Elbow, shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. So it was always painful. Two, as a professional, it was different, right? When I was in Salem and at McKay, I pitched, and then I'd play third base, I'd play shortstop, I'd hit, I'd do everything, right? And you get to play. And once I got to the professional level, everybody on that team was the best player in their high school, right? So you get in there, and it's not like a game anymore. Just wasn't that much fun. It was a job. You'd go to the ballpark as a pitcher. You'd go there 2 for treatment. You'd start your team drills at 3. Game would start at 7:05. You get out of the game maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And, it was more of a grind. So when I finally did get released in 1992, it was like, do you want us to put you on the wire? It's like, no, I've had enough. And I was always kind of a realist, right? I was good, and I could have got there. But at the same time, it was like, what are the odds, right? I'm looking at the big club and who's up there, and it's like, wow, this would be a pretty small chance of me ever getting there. So I would continue to go to Chemeketa one term every time I was home, right, and just kind of knock that away. And then I remember, I got released. I was home in like 3 or 4 days. My dad had a job for me at a manufacturing plant in Brooks, Oregon. And, 4 days prior, I was a professional athlete, and 4 days later, I'm running a massive production machine and just doing monotonous stuff over and over again, which wasn't that bad of a thing because it really motivated me to get back into school and say, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was definitely a motivator to move on to the next step. Was that next step what we share in common at Western Oregon University? At the time, Western Oregon State College? That's right. WASC. Yes, it was. I knocked out my AA at Chemeketa, got that done, and then I think I started in 93 over at Western. And at the conclusion of Western, you go from Monmouth, Oregon, the raging metropolis of Monmouth. Lived there 5 years myself. I think it was dry the time. It was dry. I was out there. In fact, it wasn't until after I graduated that
turned around. Officer Pomeroy, you might remember that name, famous Monmouth police officer. You transitioned from Monmouth, and did you immediately go into grad school? Okay. Talk to me about what happens after graduation at Western.
Yeah, so while I was at Western, my grandfather was on tribal council at Grand Ronde because my whole mother's side of the family is tribal from Grand Ronde. A state representative went and met with the Grand Ronde Tribal Council and said, do you have any students that would be interested in coming to work with me? So that was 1995. My grandfather picked up the phone and said, hey, you might want to go meet with this gentleman. I did. It fit with my curriculum at school, and that's how I got into politics. So I went, did an internship the whole 1995 session with Terry Thompson, a legislator from the coast, and then a county commissioner. And that's how I got into politics. And then from that, was able to meet the tribal attorney, who I still work with, and he still works with Warm Springs and some other tribes. And then just kind of thought to myself, hey, this politics thing might be worthwhile to do. So I really enjoyed it. Then the tribe and Spirit Mountain Casino specifically hired a contract lobbyist, which is what I am now. And part of the terms were, we're going to hire outside consultants, but we want you to train somebody that we think could work for us in the future. And that's exactly what happened. Ended up working under him, Dave Barrows. You probably know Tom Barrows. Just a wonderful mentor, and the dean of the Lobby Message Center is named after Dave. So I got to really learn that whole side of the business from him. Did that for about 7 years. And then on the public affairs side, a man named Lynn Bergstein, I don't know if you're familiar with Lynn, but he was the news analyst for KGW, as well as a public affairs specialist, and has his own firm, Northwest Strategies. Lynn passed away a couple of years ago now. So I was able to learn the public affairs side from him. So I got this wonderful blend of these, consultants that have been around at that point for 40 plus years each. Was able to do that, and then built a program at Grand Ronde based on enhancing government-to-government relationships. That program was then recognized by the Harvard American Indian Economic Development Project, and through that's when some opportunities came my way to go to grad school. So I had been in-house with Grand Ronde for about 7 years at that point.
That's an incredible group of people you're being surrounded with, and certainly I can have a greater understanding for your depth of knowledge and the expertise you bring. It's not often I have someone in front of me that is a Harvard grad. Talk to us about what that experience is like, how much time you spent in Boston. Was this, a remote degree, or were you boots on the ground? I'm there, I'm living there, and because it's a lot different in Boston than it is in Monmouth.
That's for sure. Yeah, so I was out there in 2003, 2004. Lived in a wonderful spot right by Mass General Hospital. The Big Dig was still going on, right? So it was kind of torn up, but everybody's like, oh, that's a really nice area. It didn't seem that nice to me. But the whole city, the whole feel of it, and then, of course, the education, right? So in my class, there were 220 students. This is to get my MPA, a Master's of Public Administration. 220 students in 59 countries represented. It was a pretty amazing experience. A lot of experiential learning, a lot of being able to do what I wanted to do. The nice thing about this mid-career program at the Kennedy School of Government was people that were in that class were already in their profession and their career. And it was like, how can we enhance that? Or what do these people bring to the university? And then what can we as a university then bring to these folks to take back out into the world of government? And just a fascinating experience. And, it was all, and then circling back to sports one more time, 03, 04, it was all Red Sox, Yankees, and, leaving Pedro in too long. And I've never been in a city that went into a depression like that. I mean, baseball is such a fabric of life on the East Coast, and certainly in Boston and New York. And, the nice thing was it kind of got me back into baseball again, right? So able to go to Fenway a bunch and just to experience that was really great, on top of obviously the wonderful education.
You knew it was the partnership in place that you were coming back no matter what to the tribe. This was part of the partnership, I would imagine, is you pursuing your law degree at Harvard.
Well, I didn't get a law degree, thank God, right? I like to be a problem solver, not a problem creator, right? So for all my attorney friends, I apologize, but yeah, never a law degree, just a mere master's degree in public administration, which is what I did my undergrad in, public policy, public administration. So, it was great, and it certainly gave me a nice base to come home to. I definitely wanted to be back here. I mean, my friends are here, my family's here. This is, again, I love Salem, right? I've been fortunate to live on the East Coast. I've been fortunate to live in the Southwest. I've been unfortunate to live in the Midwest. I did enjoy Iowa the time I was there. But, humidity, bugs, it's not my thing. Cold, it's not my thing. Heat is not my thing. I love Salem. We've got the perfect climate here. So I always knew I would come back. I was offered an opportunity to work for the university at the American Indian Economic Development Project, and I just didn't, that would have been nice. My parents thought I was nuts to turn that down, but I knew this is where I wanted to be. I knew what I wanted to do, and going forward, I'm glad I did that and came back home.
As you established your business and really got in earnest into lobbying, and you started to select the clients you wanted to represent, where did you start first? Where were the first steps of being a new established firm in Salem and in this market? Where did you go first, and what was the strategy behind it?
That's really tough. So obviously I went with my niche, right, which was tribal policy and working for tribes. Grand Ron was not my first client. The Oregon Tribal Gaming Alliance was, which was great, a consortium of the gaming tribes in Oregon at that time. But it really kind of started with the name of the business, right? And I took quite a while because I knew I was going out on my own. And it was like, what can I find to name this thing that means something in Indian country? Perseverance. I mean, it doesn't get much more, persevering when you look at it as tribes trying to make their way in this country. That really meant something in Indian country. But that also means something to the rest of the world, right? I'm not going to give up. We're going to go after this. We're going to persevere, and we're going to get things done. So that was step number one, coming up with that name, figuring out how I do that. Then, of course, as a young lobbyist, somewhat young at that point, then you just go out and you try to find clients. So I was fortunate. Tribal Gaming Alliance came along. Grand Ron came in second. Portland Public Schools, then Defenders of Wildlife, the Nature Conservancy. I think we might have had 9 clients or something that first go around, but everything kind of fell into place, and it was great. And it was nice to be able to take what I had learned in grad school, and frankly, what I had learned all those years riding around on a bus with a bunch of different-minded individuals, to be able to take that and put that all together and create a direction for my clients to be able to get something done. And again, I talk about lobbying all the time. I've spoken in front of the chamber. This stuff is not rocket science. It's rolling up your sleeves, figuring out who you can forge your way with, whether you agree or not, sitting down at the table and trying to get some things done. And we were able to take a simple philosophy and really, be successful over the last 20 years. And once I got through that start, it's been nice because I have been able to kind of pick and choose which clients I want to represent. Everybody needs representation, but it's always better when I can represent my tribe as a tribal member, and I can represent my city as somebody that is born and raised in Salem and loves this town, right? I take a lot of heat for loving this town, but I love it. And I'll be here till the day I die, right? This is my town. And it's great when you can represent people that you feel passionate about and they're doing good things, and to be able to guide them through that process. It's really been, looking back, I'm starting to get older now. It's like, this is worth it. This is worth doing.
You work so well on both sides of the aisle, and which is obviously the bare minimum for successful lobbying. Have you seen any flecks of hope that we can get out of the sheer partisan atmosphere in Oregon? Or what's your take on that? Maybe a little more open-ended question.
Yeah, I think things are very different than they were just 27 years ago when I started. That being said, I think opportunities still exist. And when I talk to people, whether it's at my guitar store or whether it's at my father's fabrication shop, our family business, or whether it's in the lobby game, I mean, I really work hard to find out what we have in common with other people. And I always tell people, it's like, hey, I'm an Oregonian, you're an Oregonian. I'm from Salem, you're from Salem. Let's figure out a way to work together. And unfortunately, it has really become segregated, like you mentioned, between Team A and Team B. And even at the end of the day, if you can get over a few of those initial hurdles and build a relationship with somebody on either side of the aisle, new legislators always ask me, what's your best piece of advice? It's like, get to know somebody on the other side of the aisle, because you never know when you're going to need their vote, or you're going to need somebody to talk to, or you're going to need to understand their perspective. And we've really gotten away from that in politics, and that's too bad, because you look at the country as a whole, 70% of this country's in the middle, but all we listen to are the extremes on the left and the extremes on the right. Find a friend on the other side. Sit down. Have breakfast, have lunch, have a drink with somebody, and try to figure this out. Cut the negativity. Quit trying to tear people down. Let's all get to the same table, because at the end of the day, we all live and work in this community. And the only way we're going to make it work in the future is to figure it out. So I get a little bit frustrated because the game has changed so much. The social aspect has really gone from this, which is too bad, because I know a lot of people thrive in that environment. And I know we as a society thrive in that environment. When we can sit down. Yeah, you've got liberal views and you've got conservative views, but somewhere in the middle resides the answer. And I think, I just try to stay as positive as possible, because we can make a difference, and that's all it is. I mean, whether you and I have the same political philosophy doesn't mean we don't like each other. Doesn't mean we're not into guitars, or we have the same type of dog. I don't have dogs because I'm deathly allergic to them, but you get my point. You find some common ground and you figure out a way to get it done not just for your own good, but your community and your state. I'm proud to be an Oregonian. I'm proud to be from Salem. So I'm just always trying to find those ways. And I think that's part of the challenge of my job, to bring people into that mindset or to get them to move forward looking that way. Again, it's not rocket science. It's who you know and who you like, and can we sit down and figure this out?
You bring up an interesting dynamic. Then I'm going to extrapolate, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Was the pandemic just catastrophic for developing these relationships then? I mean, we had a legislature, you couldn't meet in person. Everything was over Zoom. You're on a mask. You're not meeting face to face. Was that among the most challenging times as a lobbyist, or am I missing part of that process that eased it up?
No, I think it absolutely made things worse. But before that, things were kind of getting worse because, again, I think for optics, some things were taken away from the process. Some things being, the ability to take somebody to lunch. How does business get done in this country? You take people to lunch, you go to drinks, you get together socially, you figure it out, you go to conferences. Once that kind of got taken out of the process, it was, everybody's sitting around going, well, wow, how do I communicate with that staff person from Senator, so-and-so's office? It got very hard from that point on. Then you overlay, like you're talking about, the pandemic, then it's super hard because we're going through election cycles where I don't even get to meet some of the candidates. We're doing Zooms. And Zooms are fine, but as we all know, there's a difference between talking to somebody on the phone or on a computer and getting together with them in person. So a lot of that went away. And frankly, I think the process is worse because of that, because people don't truly understand my clients' issues until they absolutely need the information. I can't lay that groundwork. I can't build that relationship. I can't communicate effectively because I'm not seeing them. Same with, getting rid of some of the gift limits and that. I keep mentioning that, but, there's a reality behind that. Campaign contributions are part of the legislative process. Great. That's how you amplify your voice within the process. That's how you put your client on legislators' radar screens. That's one thing. The other part, though, is how do you educate these elected officials who are staring at 4,000 bills every other year, and their staff who are just frankly overworked trying to get through all those things. So how do I lay the foundation? How do I educate? How do I let people know who my clients are and what they stand for? That gets to be really difficult, especially as you mentioned during the pandemic, but also outside of the work environment, right? A lot of people just get in their car and go home nowadays, where the old days, we'd be at lunches, we'd be at breakfast, we'd be having cocktails, we'd be at industry events. And when I was a staffer, those events were crucial. One, I was in college and, still needed a free meal here or there, and I was old enough to drink, so great. But without that, what opportunities exist, both for networking, for people to have a career within this process, and also educating people as to what your clients' needs are. And there's no better way to do that than in a social setting, as we all know.
Well, let's talk about that tactical response then. How do you, and one of the things I think about, and maybe we can touch on this in a moment, but we're about to have a massive, potentially, lawsuit withstanding potentially a loss of quite a few senators. So you're going to have a brand new, large freshman class. Talk to me about the tactical side of how Justin Martin and his partners work to get those relationships started with brand new legislators.
Well, hopefully, knock on wood, we stay out of another COVID situation. And then it's all just boots on the ground. Like I said, it's rolling up your sleeves. It's getting out into these people's district, understanding their communities, understanding what's going on. As you know, one of my big clients, Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, we're the largest employer in Polk County. You look at Siletz, are the largest employer in Lincoln County. Umatilla, neck and neck with the prison in Umatilla County. And Cow Creek in Douglas County. I mean, we are drivers of economy in rural Oregon. We as tribes, people have looked at us traditionally as kind of, liberal or dependent on social programs, but not today. I mean, we do both. Yeah, we might be democratic, but by God, we're rural, and we want to make sure that our communities are alive and doing well. So how do you find that common ground? You got to get out and you just got to pound the pavement. You got to meet people. You got to go to their events. You got to go to their community and hope that when they're in town, they do the same. And, you just figure out ways, again, to amplify your voice within the legislative process.
When you're amplifying your voice, I'd imagine that is equal parts education on the key issues and the groups that you represent. How do you build trust? You have a very established network with sitting legislators and certainly the lobby as a whole, very respected and well known in that space. If I'm a new representative or new senator coming in, I want to get some rapport and some trust, but I can't go out to dinner with you, and I can't break bread or toast a martini with you. How do you build that trust?
Yeah, so, I've mentioned most of these principles. I mean, again, not rocket science. You got to figure out a way to communicate with these folks and their staff and their campaign staff on the front end. You got to work really hard. People go, what do you really do as a lobbyist? Well, a lot of that's spent as an educator, right? You are educating them to what your clients' needs and wants and how they fit into the overall picture, not just for your clients' benefit, but how do they fit in the picture in this community or in Eastern Oregon or in Southern Oregon or statewide. You got to figure all that out. You got to find ways to collaborate, right? What are the interests out there that also share this interest? Who can we also bring to the table, to enhance our story? Contributions are a big part of it. Political contribution is just part of the game, but there's other ways to contribute too, right? Whether that's a photo op with somebody at a school or, out with the sheriff or, out with the tribal council or however you do that. There's other opportunities to contribute. And then finally, presence. You just got to be present. You got to be around. They have to see you constantly. They see you in the hall. They know they can count on you. That's first and foremost. On the lobby side, all we have is kind of our integrity, right? So dealing with staff, dealing with elected officials, it's all about honesty and integrity. That first time you fib, you're going to get called on it. And you just can't. If you don't know the answer, you simply say, hey, Senator, hey, Representative, I don't know. Let me get back to you. That is absolutely key. So honesty and integrity is like the biggest part of this game. Information sharing, how to present information in a clean, clear, and concise manner, that is just first and foremost in how you communicate with these offices. Follow through. If they ask for something, you got to be there. You got to provide it. If you say you're going to do something, you need to do that. And then finally, I mean, you got to treat staff like you treat a legislator. I've been a staff member, and I can't tell you how many times I was, a student at Western Oregon, how many times I was behind closed doors with my rep. And he's like, where do we go on this one? So that staff member is just as important as that representative or that senator. So there's ways to go about it. But again, at the end of the day, it's just not that tricky. I mean, it is tricky, and you do have differences, whether it's political differences or whether it's, personality differences, but you find ways to work through it. And again, just being upfront and being honest with people, I think they respect that. And they need something from you and you need something from them. And it's a good way to carry on a relationship.
I opened up by saying there are levels to this game. And one of the things that I giggle internally about is just how in touch you are with what's really occurring in that building. And you have a number of your peers I would hold in that regard. But on time to time, I'll say, hey, Justin, what's going on with this? And you're like, Tom, that's literally going nowhere. Stop. You don't have to worry. Tell your businesses, yes, there's some stuff being talked about. It's not getting anywhere. And I appreciate your openness there. Could we talk a little bit about your family business? Talk to me a little bit about Zephyr Engineering. And I know your father was such a key part of your life and a great loss there. But share a little bit about Zephyr and maybe some of the influence your father had on you, and maybe round it all together with what Zephyr Engineering is doing and maybe a model of your father there.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I'm not too hands-on there. The nice thing about Zephyr Engineering, it's a small fab shop here in Salem, anywhere from 14 to 18 employees at any one time. My dad went to work for a couple brothers. They made him a partner. One of the brothers left. The other brother left, and he ended up with 100% of that business. I want to say maybe 2008 or 2010, something like that. And anyway, he and my mom both, they really cared about, one, doing really good work all the time. And, my he was an amazing fabricator, right? Stuff that I could never do or even dream of doing, nor did he spend a lot of time trying to get me there, right? It's like, you're kind of your mom's kid, right? You go be smart and go to school and do all that stuff. And I wasn't very mechanically inclined, right? So I think he realized that from the get-go. But they established a wonderful business, and the general manager at Zephyr has been there for 30 plus years. He and I worked at Zephyr Engineering before my dad ever owned it when it was over in West Salem. There were just two of us, and we ran the swing shift with an old punch press, and it was great. So Doug Jones, big shout out to him and our management team over there. They've been there a long time. We've got 4 or 5 employees over there have been there longer than 25 years. So it was very important to my family to take care of our employees at Zephyr. So, that's the things that I can do there, like figuring out 401ks and health plans and all that stuff. We've done that. We've implemented that. And I can't say enough how much we appreciate them. And what my dad kind of started out doing, right? He worked at Steel Co. out in the shop for 20 years, 14 years in the shop, running a huge press brake, bigger than this room. And, when computers got real big, he went over to Chemeketa and took computer aided design and figured out MS-DOS and all that stuff, and really kind of figured out what his place could be going into the future of this business. And taking that practical application and then being able to put it on a screen and design stuff is really what made him a success. And he was just really a brilliant guy. And he enjoyed going to work every day, right? It wasn't like I never saw my dad complain or bitch or moan about going to work. He loved it because he loved the people. He loved the challenge of whatever it brought. And he liked to make cool stuff. And he really did that well. Unfortunately, he got diagnosed with ALS when he was 64. And, they gave him about 3 years. And sure enough, like 3 years to the day, passed away at age 67, which is tough because I was born on his 19th birthday. So we were always very, very close. And it's a great business. It's a little challenging at times, right? Manufacturing, it's up, it's down, but I've learned a lot about that business, and I've really learned to trust my management team. Those guys are amazing, and it's great. And the other nice thing about that business, as everybody's seen these upturns and the downturns in the economy, was Zephyr. It was always diversified enough not to ever get hit in those tough times, right? So we've seen some businesses in and around town that were really hit hard in some of those crashes over time. And Zephyr's always just been diversified enough and have done enough of different things to keep it going. So very proud of that business. Love it. Hopefully, we'll see in the future when we've all kind of ridden that time out, how that goes. But it's great. And we love where we're at. We're just, a couple blocks from here. And no, it's a great business.
That's great. And I love the family aspect of it. A little tribute back to your father's work ethic and skill. You have another really fun business. And I'm a guy who I yearn for, we got to find our passion in life. And I think you've hit a home run with yours, to do a little baseball analogy there. But talk to us about Guitar Castle and your dear friend, Tim Knight, and really Tim's somebody we've all known. I grew up here like you. We've seen him since we were a kid playing guitar, and just very talented. Time with Boys and Girls Club, and he founded Guitar Castle quite a few years ago in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah, 1988.
88. And talk to me about you and his relationship, and how does Justin come into ownership of Guitar Castle beyond being a major cool guitar dude and enthusiast?
Well, that's very kind. Getting back to my dad. So my dad and Tim Knight were best friends in high school. So you'll see on our website, theguitarcastle.com, you'll see there's a photo of Dad and Tim at graduation. They got their skinny ties on, a couple nerds from the 1968. And anyway, that was a relationship that was already there. Tim had been to my grandparents' house before I was ever born. And they had a good relationship. They didn't hang out much after high school. And but then, I played the drums growing up. Played the piano first at Catholic school, and that was a nightmare. Sister Mary and Cecilia, I'm assuming she's not with us anymore because she seemed real old back then, and that was, 35, 40 years ago. And anyway, did piano for all those years, drums, and then once you get out of the house, it's like, well, I can't play the drums anymore in an apartment, right? I don't have a piano laying around, so you kind of gravitate to the next instrument. So I was like, yeah, I'll go pick up a guitar. So I just went down to Guitar Castle when it was over on Court Street, where the old bus mall was, which is where Paradiso is now. Wonderful restaurant. And I just went in there and bought a guitar and a little amp. And I didn't tell Tim who I was until after I'd bought it. And he's like, whoa, you should have told me who you were, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, built this wonderful relationship with Tim. It was nice to see him and my dad kind of get back together again over the years. And it's just wonderful. So, Tim and my dad, same age. So I knew at some point when I get out of the political game and, when my guys are done running Zephyr, what am I going to do? I'd like to retire early. And what am I going to do with myself all this time? So I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll look at buying this guitar shop from Tim, talked it through with Tim, and he thought it was a great idea, and the time was never right? And it was like, oh, we'll get to this, Well, it got to that point, and it was time to do it. And so, in August of 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, I bought Guitar Castle. We were over on Ferry, and, I love everything about Salem. I don't know if Ferry Street's the best business street, because it's Highway 22, right? So, gave that a go, and 3 years later, the doors are still open, and like you said, it's a very, very fun business, and it's one that really puts me more in touch with the community than a lot of my other jobs, right, and my other businesses. So, I just love people coming in, whether they're from out of town, because it's always nice for people to come in. You can ask them about your city, what they think about it, or bands that come in and play at the Elsinore or playing around town. And no, it really keeps you in touch with the community, especially the kids. You got to tell them to turn it down every once in a while. But other than that, it's been an eye opener. And then Tim's still working. Tim's still working for us. So if people do see this, come on down on Fridays and Saturdays. Tim's usually in there. So
Beautiful location on High Street now. Talk to me about that selection of that location and maybe a little your excitement because it's beautiful.
well, thanks. The store looks really good. A couple things we were able to get off of Ferry Street. Nikki and I had been on High Street for 18 years. We were in the Grand Theater with a beautiful office there. So we were really only half a block away. We moved our offices into the back of the guitar shop. So whenever you see that on-air sign, that means I'm on a Zoom, probably with the city of Salem or tribal council and or elected officials. So we have to tell people to keep it down a little bit. Plus, there's 9 apartments above our shop, and it's a beautiful historic building, the Arthur Moore building, and no, it's really great. There are a few challenges there, but the building's turned out wonderfully. The owner, I think, is Ilsa Green, and her son-in-law, and they do a great job managing it. Just a great business, a great part of town. I love it. It's something to look forward to every day.
Well, you're fulfilling that passion bucket too, and I bet you see some incredible guitars come through there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I should be selling guitars all the time, but oftentimes I come home with a lot of stuff. It's like I don't pay myself at this business, but I am getting a lot of gear for really good prices. But again, I mean, it's kind of like the lobby business, right? And I know people are intimidated about going into guitar shops. They might be beginners or, they'll see somebody playing really well, but you never should. Come in, ask questions, play everything you can. You got to bond with stuff, especially in this day and age. Everything's online. We can all get it. I'm as bad as the next person. I can get something from Amazon same day now, which is awesome. But you know what? With guitars, you got to come in, you got to touch them, you got to feel them, you got to bond with them. And I would just tell people out there, don't be intimidated. Come on down, have some fun, ask a bunch of questions, and we'll get you down the road because it's just a fun hobby. I wish I would have started, 30 years ago.
Well, I appreciate you keeping it local because there are box stores that you could go to for these services, and we need to be going to the people that live in our communities that are experts in this. Do you want to go purchase a guitar from somebody being paid minimum wage in a retail shop? I'm glad they're employed, but the skill difference and knowing what a customer would need of Tim and you holding the guitar here, let's turn this backwards. Maybe you're left-handed. I mean, just knowing those little things, it's got to be a huge difference in experience.
And it's fun when you can get someone into something more than they thought they could afford, right? Or it's like, hey, yeah, come on down because we can kind of make this happen for you. Now, I've been really encouraged because people do like to buy local. Now, there's no way I can compete with Amazon, right? No, I'll just tell people that from the get-go. I can't do that. All of our guitar pedals, you can get on Amazon for $11 to $19 cheaper than you can get them here at Guitar Castle. But people want to support local. They'll go up to about $20, but we always do that. And before I put anything on the internet, I make sure we have about 6 weeks where it's on the wall. So locals can come in, they can see something, they can play it. They don't have to go onto Reverb or one of the national sites. I also really work well with all the other music stores in town. I mean, they're great. Paul at Uptown Music in Kaiser. Paul's great. The folks at Willamette Valley Music, the Drum Bug. We've got a really nice, and I will send people to Guitar Center. Sometimes we just don't have that stuff, right? And I can't keep it in stock. So I've been really encouraged because people really do want to support their local store, and they really do want to buy local. So that's been really kind of a cool upside of the whole thing.
Music to this Chamber of Commerce guy's ear. So wonderful. Life is not without some challenges, and love seeing the passion that you have for your family's business and your personal passion business and partnership with Tim. Take me to a time, maybe on the legislative side, where Justin Martin didn't get his way. And has that ever happened?
What? When does that happen?
Talk to me.
Ask my clients after this last session.
Well, let's dissect that a little. And so talk to me about a challenge that maybe was a little surprising or just caught you off, and you weren't able to get where you wanted to go. How did you tackle that? How'd you tactically go, okay, next steps are?
Well, that's happened several times over the years. I mean, I like to think of myself as a success, but oftentimes things take multiple sessions to get done. And most clients understand that, right? Defenders of Wildlife, Conservation Easement Bill took literally 3 legislative sessions. Now Republicans were in control, but fine, we still found a way to make that happen. And Democrats are in control now, and it's still hard for some of my clients to get things done. But you just got to find a different approach. You got to find a different way to go about it. I've had some pretty big failures in the past. My very first session as a contract lobbyist, 2005, the legislative session went all the way into August. And I was the last bill heard on behalf of Portland Public Schools. It was 2:35 a.m. I'm in flip-flops and sitting in front of the dais with, 8 or 10 members. And boom, they just gavelled me down. They didn't move the bill. And that was, deals that we had set in place, hours and hours of work. I had literally been in the Capitol that day for like 21 hours. I remember sitting in Wilson Park. Do they edit this show? I remember sitting in Wilson Park with my head down at like 1 a.m. And my good friend, mentor, looks at me and goes, dude, you didn't name your business I don't give a shit strategies. You're still alive. I was like, yeah, that's right. Right back into the building, trying to get it done. Now, I didn't get it done. I remember sitting in my office at like 4:15 in the morning, cracked a brew, just thinking, what the hell, Are these guys going to leave me? What happened? I mean, and all you can do at the end of the day is go, you know what, I gave it my all. I really did give it a shot. I was in the game. I was the last bill heard. And you know what? Everything works out. Governor Kulongoski called a special session the next April, and I got it done, right? And that's great, but it's awfully hard to take that loss for 6 months, and let it stew. Because to me, it wasn't just about a win. Okay, Justin Martin gets a notch in the win column. No, it was about 46,000 students in the Portland Public School District that were going to miss out on that $18 million a year. That's why it hurt me, not because I didn't come through. But look who really is impacted by this. So that was a huge learning experience for me, right? And this last session was tough. It was tough because of the walkout. We've had several walkouts over the last 4 or 5 sessions. And again, I'm not blaming any side on that. But when that happens, the animosity just builds and builds and builds. And it's really hard, as I mentioned earlier in our interview, it's hard for people just to come to the table and figure out a way to get things done. And oftentimes what I'm seeing now is Team A and Team B, they just curl up and they go back to their corners and nothing really gets done. And unfortunately, I think for some of my proposals this last session, they got caught up in that. And that'll be tough. But again, it's perseverance strategies, right? We're going to figure out a way to find those revenues. We're going to figure out a way to move forward, whether it's on behalf of my tribe or my city. I have to. I don't have a choice. I live here. I love this place. I'm going to do my all to make sure it gets done. Same with my tribe, right? Same with my other clients. Whatever it takes to get it done, we will get it done. And unfortunately, I just think it's politics, right? So you got to expect it. But at the end of the day, you just got to persevere and try to get things done. And I think we'll get to where we need to be.
Were there any surprises last session? Anything that you were like, boy, didn't see that coming?
I don't know. I mean, it was an interesting session, right? Just kind of coming out of the pandemic, but still kind of in it, especially the whole time leading up to it. So we didn't have the staff level relationships that we would all like. And that's not just me, that's all my colleagues. You got a new administration, new governor, new office, people trying to figure out their roles, their responsibilities.
Capital reconstruction.
You've got construction going on, so you can't really move freely in the building. Again, just another physical barrier to people being able to get together and solve problems. So it was really tricky. But we knew it was coming. I mean, it was just tricky. And my hope is going into the future that we just don't have this kind of animosity anymore. And as leadership moves out, like you said, what do we have? Over 30% new legislators. As this keeps moving, I mean, we got to figure out a way to educate folks and make sure we're all moving in the same step, because we're all Oregonians at the end of the day. And I know what the people want for their communities in rural Oregon is the same that people want for their communities in urban Oregon, right? And I know we can find common ground to be able to get that done for the benefit of everybody. So I'm still encouraged, even if it was a rough session.
What duties do we have as leaders to break down a little bit of this? I don't know so much of it, the partisan divide. It's how people are choosing to interact and the ability to get on a keyboard and become an expert and just share information that may or may not even be true. What's our responsibility in improving this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we got to continue to tell our elected officials that we want them to work across the aisle. We want them to build the relationships that are going to be beneficial for their own districts, for the communities, and for the state as a whole. And I think we just got to keep people's feet to the fire on that. And I've told this story. It's like, we've had all these walkouts. And, we've all had our differences with the Senate President, Peter Courtney, and some frustrations at time. But you know what? He was always there, and he held that decorum of the Senate sacred. And frankly, if Jackie Winters was still here, between Peter and Jackie representing our city and our community, none of this stuff would have happened. I really believe it wouldn't have happened, because those two figure out a way to get together. Whether they're politically divided, they liked each other and they respected the institution. And we need to get back to that today. I love the stories of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill and Peter and Jackie, because you know what? This meant something to them. It means something to everybody in there. They wouldn't put their name on a ballot and run. Just that alone takes a lot of wherewithal. But those people respected this process. And frankly, I don't think it would be divided like it is today. And that's not a slight on anybody, but people within those chambers have to build those relationships so we get away from kind of the pettiness that goes on now, or the Team A and Team B. And hopefully we can get back to that. I mean, I think people are just finding their way, and we're coming out of a pandemic. So I think those opportunities will present themselves. And, I look forward to the days when we all do walk in that building and go, hey, I'm here on behalf of my client. You're here on behalf of your district. But at the end of the day, we're doing something good for our state, which we all love.
Legislative week going on right now. What does that mean to you?
Not much. I guess it's a good time to people to get together around town. I don't know. I mean, the other thing that kills me about my town and this whole process, when these gift limits came in and these rules came in, they didn't limit campaign contributions. They just limited, being able to take somebody to lunch and all that. Frankly, it kind of killed our restaurants here in town, right? So when the legislature's in town, we should see increased activity. So a week like this week is cool. I get to see some buddies from Central Oregon and Eastern Oregon and just Portland, and everybody's in town a little bit. I don't spend too much time in the building because there's no outcomes at these things. There's some opportunity to present some stuff, but not everybody's there. I don't know. Legislative days are interesting. Yeah, I'm still not a huge fan of annual sessions, but that was Senator Courtney's deal, and we're doing it. And oh well. So legislative days have their place, but I wouldn't put a lot of stock in them.
Ballot measure 110. Is it working?
It's a tough question. I'd say no, but a lot of ballot measures right out of the gate, do they work? No. You got to go back. That's one of the main roles of the legislature, to help shape policy around what Oregon voters wanted. So, I hope and I pray that the treatment aspects of that is working. And if it's not, let's get back in the building and figure out in statute how we make that work better, because people need those opportunities. And, you gotta figure out a way to better people's lives. And as we all know, it doesn't just affect the individual, it affects their family, it affects beyond their family. And so I don't know. That's tough. It's not really my area, but I would say it's too early to tell. But let's get some sideboards on things and let's make sure that's not so difficult on counties and cities and local governments that really have to come in and figure out how to deal with a lot of this stuff.
Payment in lieu of taxes. City of Salem has an extraordinary amount of non-taxable land that the state occupies and utilizes city services on. We're supportive as an organization of payment in lieu of taxes, but we don't know the functionality of how real that can become. And I think there's some challenges ahead before anything would be realized there realistically. What's your take on it?
Well, obviously the mayor, when he was a state rep, this was very important to him. It's very important to us at the city. I can't really comment on the city's behalf, but as a citizen, I would say this. I believe our public safety professionals are the best. You look at our fire department, which my uncle was a captain. You look at our police department, we're great. But we're also being asked to really step up and take on that extra burden because everybody comes into, a government town, the state capital. So, we're having those discussions now with leadership. We'll keep having those discussions because, frankly, it's not fair to push our professionals to do this above and beyond as they've been doing and been doing very well. So we hope something comes of that, but we'll definitely keep pushing that because we're the ones that step up. We're the ones that are there providing that public safety for the entire state during those types of events and or whatever else is going on in and around that area. So it's very important to us.
Well, just affirming that the Salem Chamber stands beside the city in that request from the state, and if the business community can be helpful, we would take on that role where people see fit. Justin Martin, Perfect World, can either repeal or introduce something that can have a significant change, positive change in this state. I understand this is a fictitious question, but somebody with your experience has probably got a take or two on an area we could improve. Where would you go?
We. Who do you mean by we?
Looking at it optically, the state of Oregon as a whole, as a lobbyist, what opportunity, maybe one or two, do you see that we could make a major change as a state to create a better ecosystem for our residents?
Well, that's a tricky question. Me as Joe citizen, I think we need a better balance in our tax structure. That's just Justin Martin talking, right? I've lived in states with a sales tax. I'd love to see my income tax go down. I'd love to see us capture some of, the wonderful things that we have in the state that people come into the state to do. We should capture some of that revenue. We should probably look at property taxes and how that works and figure that three-legged stool out so it's more equitable and so that we can do some more things on the ground instead of this boom or bust, which unfortunately, in my limited 27 years, you see good times, you see bad times. Look at this huge kicker we got coming. Well, that's great. But what could we do with that revenue? Instead of having to go back and beg every legislative cycle, what if we had a huge rainy day fund that said, hey, we're going to focus on education. We're going to focus on the transportation needs. We're going to focus on economic development. We're going to focus on areas that'll really get us into the future, right? And I'd like to see a little more tax fairness when it comes to that. Now, we all know that's a death knell issue, right, if you put it out there, but somebody someday's got to be able to sit around the table and say, how do we do this more equitably, right? So we don't see situations where, I'm out there defending my city because we need revenue. And it's like, well, if we don't get it from folks coming in here every day, utilizing our services and our facilities, where do we get it? They're going to tax businesses, right? And I own 3 of them, so that's a problem. So I think there's ways to come together and look at the entire, the tax structure as a whole to where we get out of this boom or bust cycles. I don't think that's partisan. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Let's figure out a way to sit down and come together and really do something, right? Because people struggle. I mean, the great part of our state is that we're so diverse too, right? It's like, I was in John Day last weekend. I just love it over there. I guarantee you we don't share a lot politically with those people that I'm out shooting trap with, once a year. But by God, they're really good people. So are the people from Portland. I mean, it's just, let's get over this, us against them, and figure it out. Because there's wonderful people in every corner of the state. And I know we can all come together and make something better for the future of Oregon. I really do.
What are you most excited about, or maybe most optimistic about heading into the long session? The short session.
Well, short session, not so much. I mean, short sessions are tough, right? I mean, you've got a regular session that's super compressed in terms of time, and you put that short session in there, 35 days. It's mega compressed. Everybody's got, 2 priorities. I don't get too fired up because most deals are cut before you even go in there. Plus, it's very political, right? That session ends 2 days before filing day. So there's a lot of gamesmanship that goes on. So I don't know if I'm really looking forward to that short session. I'll be there, and it'll be fun. We'll be trying to get funding, obviously, for the city, housing homelessness. The tribe's got some endeavors they're looking at. Always need money for, funding and education on behalf of my Boys and Girls Clubs and the School Boards Association and the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. We'll be in there fighting for dollars. We'll be looking to do what we can do. But what I'm really excited about, to your question, is having a full interim to where I can actually get back out there, meet with staff, meet with legislators in and around their districts, figure out what they need in their communities, then go back to the drawing board and figure out how my clients can help with that, something that benefits all of us, not just our own individual interests. And I'm looking forward to that, actually having some time to travel around the state, meet with folks, and be able to do that kind of that retail lobbying that we did for years. So I'm looking forward to that because we didn't have that last session. We barely have it going into this short session, but we will definitely have a nice full go next cycle. I'm looking forward to that.
Great insight on kind of the work that's done prior to a short session. And I don't think we hear that transparency too often, so I appreciate you sharing it.
That's a real key to finish that point. I mean, a lot of people go, "You're a lobbyist. What the hell do you do for the other?" What is it? We're on 7 months, right, out of a 24-month cycle. Everybody's like, "What the hell do you do?" Well, you get out and you get your work done, right? When it's not so compressed, when it's not a 3-minute, testimony or a 5-minute meeting in a legislator's office where they're stacked, they're behind by 30 minutes every day, right? So what do lobbyists do in the interim? They get their work done, right? You go to events, you get out, you educate people, get around the state, you let people know about your issue, and by the time you get in that building, 1, they trust you, to your point earlier, and 2, you've kind of greased the skids a little bit, right? People know what you're about. They know what you're coming to talk to them about. That's how you really get your work done in the interim.
Can't harvest fruit from seeds you planted that morning. And so you're planting and cultivating your seeds and looking at the harvest long term. How does Justin Martin recharge? How do you got to be ready for action, and you got to serve your clients, and you got to work with your work partners. How do you recharge and get your energy refilled?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe my dad instilled in me kind of this, every day is kind of, a new day, a new opportunity. I recharge by just laying around and doing nothing, right? Watching football and playing my guitar. But I guess you got to just kind of step back, take a look, figure out how you're going to approach something the next, whatever it is, the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. And just kind of got to have a game plan, right? I think my dad really instilled this. You just got to look forward. You just got to keep looking forward. It's cool to look back at the past. I love history. I love looking at the past, but what am I going to do tomorrow, right? Step 1 should be dropping like 20 pounds, but I've got other plans, right?
I'll go on that plan with you.
20 is a little light, too.
I was going to say.
Maybe 40 or 50, maybe, just to keep me, now that I'm I'm 53. It's like, I'm getting close to heart attack range here, man. I gotta do something. So
We'll start our own walking group. You mentioned 53 and
for 3 more days, I mean, I'm gonna be 54.
almost
on Saturday.
54 on Saturday. As you look at new talent coming into the building, I'm sure you see people eager. You've had, your first-time staffers. You have your seasoned staffers. If somebody were to have their interest piqued about the field, the profession of lobbying, what characteristics are you looking for as an employer from new talent? And what are some of the characteristics that those individuals are going to have to be successful in the lobbying profession?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody's representing a client or an interest, but you still have to be yourself. I mean, you got to be genuine. I mentioned honesty and integrity. That's all you got in this game, really. And I like when, I see new lobbyists coming from the staff side usually or administrative side and coming in, and they're all gung-ho, and that's awesome. But again, you got to be genuine. You got to be who you are. You can't BS your way through it. And people got to know you care. They got to know you care about your client, even if you're representing, somebody that people go, I can't believe you're representing them. Yeah, but they deserve to be represented. And people have to be genuine, regardless of who they're representing. So that to me is just a really good quality. People that are themselves. You don't have to pretend to be somebody you're not. And you don't have to do a ton of stuff that isn't related to what you want to accomplish. And I always tell kind of young lobbyists, it's like, it's a classic. Work smarter, not harder, right? Don't ever avoid hard work, but figure out the way before you get down there, right? The last thing you want to do is be doubling back or, we've all done that, right? Without a GPS, we're 45 minutes in the wrong direction, figuring it out, coming back. So, yeah, there's a lot of talented folks. I just feel bad for them because they didn't get to see it the way I saw it, right? And I'm sure, now that I'm getting older, every generation probably says the same thing, right? But we've had some pretty extreme circumstances, both by these gift limits going away, the social aspect kind of paring its way out. Like you said, people can get on a keyboard, and unfortunately they do that before they go have a conversation with somebody. So, and then you throw a pandemic on top of that. I mean, it's been a really tough environment to navigate, and it's been really frustrating for us, right? People that have been around long enough to know how it used to be and how things really used to get done to now, I don't know if legislator so-and-so is going to get that one pager on an email. I mean, I'm used to handing them the page, putting it right in front of them. I don't know if they're going to read that in committee or not. So anyway, you've got this overlay of technology. You've got this overlay of the pandemic. You've got this overlay of the way people do business now. And I hope it gets back to more of what I think we as Oregonians all appreciate and what will make for better legislation in the future, which is relationships. It's just building relationships down here and trying to represent people the best you can.
Truth is not the best policy. It's the only policy.
That's exactly right.
This has been a conversation with Justin Martin from Perseverance Strategies, also family business, Zephyr Engineering, and theguitarcastle.com. Justin, thank you so much for taking time and sharing some of your experiences as well as your philosophies on your profession. And thank you for loving Salem. I guess I'd close with this. We both chosen Salem. We could be a lot of places. I choose Salem. I love this community. I believe we're on an incredible trajectory right now. I think we're going to see some very special things. I'm looking forward to jumping on an airplane in a week's time out of our Salem airfield. Tell our guests in closing why Salem is so special to you and why you're committed to being here long term.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a tricky question too, but I love it. One, I love the climate, right? Everybody loves that. It's great. I love rain, right? Gives you an excuse to read, gives you an excuse to play your guitar, just do nothing. Hour from the coast, hour from the mountains. And, to me, Salem, you mentioned it. It's like there is definitely a turnaround going on. We're transitioning, right, from a 70s model to a current model. And you know what? A lot of good things are happening. And I hear that a lot in my store. People come in and go, oh, Salem's great. People that don't know, right? People that haven't been ensconced in all the battles or that, they come in and go, that's a pretty cool town. Now, it'll always, we're always between Eugene and we're always in the, the shadow of Portland. But it's got a lot to offer. So I just love it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm from here or if I just love the people here or what. But there's nowhere else I'd want to be. Maybe Kauai a couple months every year, but my second home. But I love it here, and I'm not going anywhere. Plus, I was serious about that bugs thing. Living in the Midwest, man, cockroaches and mayflies and moths and crickets in the Southwest, and geez.
Great insight.
We got it the best here. People don't know how good they got it.
We're pretty fortunate. Two proud Salemites sharing conversation. Justin, thank you so much for your time. Incredible leadership at the state capitol, helping leaders be successful, having much more knowledge before making decisions, and great community stewardship. Thank you for loving Salem, and we look forward to supporting all three of your businesses. Justin Martin.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Salem Chamber podcast. The Salem Chamber is a 501c6 not-for-profit organization representing nearly 1,100 businesses in the greater Salem area. For additional information, please visit salemchamber.org. This has been a production of Dan Johnson and Lena Prine on the Salem Chamber's professional staff team.